Evening, everybody. I have to say you're a very enthusiastic crowd. It's way past beer 30. Well into the time for you guys to be having a beer, right, Ilari? Enjoying a drink of some kind, relaxing. And it's Saturday night, for God's sake. And here you guys are at a technical conference. That's quite impressive. Somebody tried to organize a technical conference in the United States that went until 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. They'd have problems. So my figurative hat is off to you. I don't know if you know that expression, but it's indicating respect. I am from Texas, and you might think that I would have a cowboy hat that I could, tip to you, but we have this expression in Texas, all hat and no cattle, which is about somebody who pretends to be a cowboy. And say has all hat and no cattle. So I do not have a hat because I do not want to be all hat and no cattle. Metrics. I'm a big fan of metrics. I think they are very useful. And when I do assessments for clients, I'm always interested in looking at metrics that they're gathering and trying to assess how they're doing based on real numbers. But one of the things that I definitely see when I look at clients and how they're using metrics is that there are a lot of things that people do with metrics that are stupid. Doesn't mean that they are stupid, the people that is, but the things that they are doing with their metrics are stupid. So the title of this presentation, Stupid Metrics Tricks, is not so that you go away going, oh no, I'm doing that, I must be stupid. Okay? You don't have to be stupid to do some of the things that I'm about to talk about. I've seen very smart people do these things. And you've probably seen smart people do stupid things with metrics too. Some of these I think you'll recognize. Now as we go, one of the things that I'll try to point out is how to avoid doing the stupid thing, not just, here's a stupid thing. Okay, so the concept of metrics use and misuse goes about 100 or so years back. So there is this fellow, a management consultant, back before they even had the phrase management consultant, but that's what he was, named F.W. Tailor. And Tailor came up with this concept that he referred to as scientific management. And scientific management, Taylor's principles of this was that there is a one best way to do something, anything. If you study the process of doing something, you will be able to find one way, which is better than all the other ways. Okay? And that basic concept in the process of studying the work that's being done is referred to as Taylorism. Taylorism is something that's alive and well and with us today. It's one of its commonly known ancestors is lean methodology. So if you are doing Kanban, for example, you are a later-day Tailorist. Okay. So what you would do is study a process and try to identify inefficiencies or effectiveness issues with that process. And then when you identified those, you would remove them and make the process better and better. Okay? Well, in the 1920s or 30s, I forget the exact year when this happened, there was a organization at a manufacturing facility in Hawthorne, hence the name Hawthorne effect, also called the Westinghouse effect because it was a Westinghouse factory that was being studied. And they were trying to find out ways of improving the productivity of the manufacturing teams. And they had this hypothesis that lighting would have an effect on productivity. So they turned the lighting up and they measured productivity. Hey, productivity went up. Cool. There's an interaction with lighting and productivity, huh? All right, now those of you who are statisticians here should go, wait a minute, that's correlation, that's not causality. So they decided they were going to do another experiment. So they turned the lighting down. So they made it less bright in the factory. And what they were hoping was to see a nice, curve between them, right? Be able to extrapolate the effect of the lighting on productivity. Guess what happened with the productivity? That's right, it went up. The lighting went up, productivity went up. The lighting went down, lower than it was even before, and the productivity went up again. Why? Because what gets measured gets done. Okay? The very act of measuring something, because there's a human in the loop here, changes that something. And I'm not talking about quantum physics here, though that's another instance of it, but it's for totally different reasons. It changes the outcome because the human in the loop knows that he or she is being measured and probably knows or can figure out what is being measured and probably knows or can figure out what a good movement of that needle is. So, something definitely to remember. Anytime you are starting to take measurements, that will affect people's behavior. People will respond to the very act of measurement. And it has that what gets measured gets done rule has an interesting and important corollary, which is what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. Okay? Take a look at this statistic here. People get hit by cars when they're crossing the street, at least in the United States. Maybe this happens here too, because they're doing something like this. Right? Walk right out into the street, diddling with their phone. Yeah? Now, my kids, I have two kids. They're teenagers. Sorry, something weird just happened there. It really matters to them if somebody retweets them or follows them or something like that. This is like a huge deal in their life. My daughter once made this noise. She was upstairs in her room, made this noise. I thought that she'd gotten a phone call telling her one of her friends had died. I'm serious. I thought there was some serious, horrible thing had happened. But no, she was actually just excited because some celebrity I've never heard of, had retweeted one of her tweets or something like that. It was huge, right? She would have walked right in front of a car and gotten killed if her phone had been in her hand and she was crossing the street at that moment. So, what happens if you measure things that are less important than what you don't measure? You're going to get more of those things that you're measuring, right? More likes and retweets and stuff, but, the stuff you're not measuring, what's the risk that you're going to get hit by a car right now? That's not going to move in a direction that you would like. So now you might be thinking, okay, well, so far so good. As long as I make sure I'm measuring the right stuff, I can change behavior. And that change in behavior will be in a desired direction. Okay. True on the first part, measuring will change behavior. False on the second part, it might not be in the desired direction. So I had a client once. I was talking to some of the people that worked for this manager, and they were describing their manager in words that I'd really never heard anybody use in public about their manager. I mean, like in front of each other. I won't repeat them here because I don't want you to learn any new English words or be offended by some of these English words, but they were not very nice. And so at the root of the animosity towards the manager was a simple decision that had been made, which was that they were going to use two metrics in their annual performance evaluations. One was to metric to measure and reward the testers, and the other was a metric to measure and reward, or possibly punish, the developers. So the metrics were simple. Anytime a tester filed a bug report, if that bug report turned out to not actually be a bug, they would get dinged. They would get marked down on their annual performance evaluation. And anytime a developer had a bug reported against his or her code that turned out to be an actual bug, they would get dinged. You see the problem here? So now I've got the incentive for the tester is to never, ever, ever admit that their bug report is not actually a real problem. The incentive for the developer is to never, ever, ever admit that the bug is actually a bug. And if they have to admit that it's a bug, they have to convince people it's in somebody else's code. Can you come up with anything more corrosive to teamwork and collaboration? It would be hard. You'd have to work at it, right? So, what was going on here? Was the manager evil? Did she have horns? Was she the devil? No. She told me when I confronted her with this situation and the outcome that it was causing, she said, but we have to have some sort of objective way of measuring people and rewarding them. Otherwise, the annual performance evaluations are just a beauty contest. They're all about who I like the most. They're subjective, and that's not fair. Well, you could probably do better than taking a process metric, because that's what she was doing, taking two process metrics and confusing those with people metrics. Okay? Now, you might say, process metric, people metric, confusion, what is he talking about? I wish that I were as smart as W.E. Deming was, and I aspire to have somewhere kind of maybe sort of approaching the level of long-lasting influence that he has had. But I'm sure I'm going to fall short in both areas. Deming came up with this brilliant illustration of what's wrong with a lot of metrics programs that are used to reward and punish people, and it's called the red bead, black bead experiment, or the red bead, white bead experiment. It kind of depends on the color of the beads that are used. Doesn't really matter much. Have any of you seen this before? No. Never seen the red bead experiment or white bead experiment, Deming experiment, never? Okay. That's an easy problem to fix, YouTube. YouTube has this. There's a recording of me running the red bead experiment, and this was at the PNSQC conference about 2 months ago, and you can see that out on the RBCS YouTube channel if you want. And you can also, on YouTube, find the original with Deming running it. And the way this works is, it's really simple. You take a bucket, actually 3 buckets, that contain a mixture of red and white beads. And The job of each person, in this case each team of two, is to separate out the beads. The sort of fiction behind this is that the customer, the fictitious customer for whom this process is being carried out, will only pay for white beads. So you're trying to remove the red beads from the mix. And so what happens then is that the folks use these scoops, these paddles, and separate the beads, or they try to separate the beads, dumping them into a container that is holding the resulting beads. And again, the idea is that this be entirely white, the resulting bag of beads be entirely white. And then what happens is that the people, in this case the teams, but it can also be individuals, are scored based on the number of white beads and red beads they turn in. White beads good, red beads bad. Right? And they get rewarded or punished based on their relative scores. Now, you might say, okay, well, what's wrong with that? Okay, well, there's a number of things wrong with that. It's true, everybody has a clearly defined task. They follow the same process. They're given the same amount of time. They're evaluated quantitatively in exactly the same way. So it seems utterly fair, but if you look closely at the process, and this can be demonstrated statistically, the differences in scores are purely a result of random chance. In other words, the game is rigged. The game is totally rigged against the people participating because the manager who has defined the process and provided the tools, forbidden any variation from the process, basically put these people in a box where they can't actually change the outcome. But they're held accountable for it. And an interesting thing that you'll see is, and this happened in the experiment when I did it in Portland, is that people immediately figure out ways to cheat. Immediately. I mean, we ran this experiment, it took 10 minutes. Within a minute, people had already figured out ways of gaming it, one way or the other, to change the outcome. In a way which was not beneficial, by the way, for the quote-unquote customer. It's not like a process variation that resulted in a higher number of white beads being delivered. It actually would have resulted in a lower number, but it would have improved their score. Does this remind you of anything? You ever seen people behave this way? They're acting in response to a metrics program, and they're doing something that is entirely rational from their point of view, but is actually counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? I would suggest, from my experience as a consultant, that anytime you misuse a process capability metric to reward and punish people, you are guaranteed to get that outcome. Just guaranteed. People are rational actors in most cases, and they will figure out a way of cheating. And if they feel like they are being screwed, they feel like they are being taken advantage of, there is no moral reason for them not to cheat. All right, so quickly, which of these two thermometers shows a lower temperature? I mean, say blue. Blue shows lower. Say red shows lower. All right, so you guys are good. You didn't let me trap you. I actually had some people fall for it and say the blue one does. There's a couple traps here, right? One of them is the color coding, right? So you immediately look at that and go, oh yeah, blue is cool and red is hot. Yeah, but you didn't fall for that one. And the other thing here is, what are the units? Okay? What if the blue thermometer is Celsius and the red one is Kelvin? Right? Yeah. Fahrenheit and Celsius, same problem, yeah? So, this happens. Now, you guys are like, oh, no, I wouldn't do this. I would never do this. Well, maybe you are, or maybe you know somebody who is. So, test pyramid. You guys hear of the test pyramid? Yeah? I know, Andre, I promised not to talk about Agile, so I'm going to avoid the A word here, but there is this concept in the word that shall not be mentioned, or at least it grew out of that. It basically said you should do a whole lot more tests, especially automated tests at the unit level, and just do kind of a few tests up at the system and acceptance level. Yeah? So, fine. Good advice. Find bugs early, as close as possible to the point of origin. Remove them quickly. Smart. Early testing in QA, basic principle of testing. From the ISTQB syllabus, by the way, Hilary. Problem with that. I see people, and I'm not making this up, count the number of unit tests they have and compare it to the number of automated system tests they have. They go, hey, this is great. We got like 100,000 automated unit tests, and we only have 1,000 automated system tests. So we're pyramid all over the place. And I'm like, you dropped the pyramid on your head, dude, because the units are completely different. I think about what a unit test does, right? A unit test goes in and it checks a single little piece, maybe 10 lines of code, maybe 20, maybe. Think about your automated system tests. Think about your manual system tests. How many thousands of lines of code are being covered by those? And that's just assuming that measuring lines of code is the relevant dimension here. And of course, there are other, even more relevant dimensions to measure the size. But the point is that the size of those things are completely different. But people do math on things with different units. Oh, not smart. Now, this slide, I'm afraid Hilary and Jan have just beaten the crap out of this idea already about the nonsense of 100% test automation. But I'll go quickly through it here just to hit the nail with a hammer one last time. Here, this is not unusual. I hear this of 100% test automation. Now, I love this Rube Goldberg cartoon here, right? This guy's like automating, wiping the soup off of his mustache. That's what that machine does at the upper right there. I'm pretty sure that's probably a task that would be more effectively and efficiently handled manually. Yeah. So, as was mentioned before today, 100% automation means that you try to automate stuff that doesn't need to be automated or can't be automated, or you ignore stuff that can't be automated, like, oh, that's not important to test. The level of risk associated with something has nothing to do with the question of whether the test for it can or can't be automated, right? So, this makes no sense. And it makes you completely focused on verification, checking that the system does what you think it's going to do, because you're checking against requirements of some sort or another, because ultimately an automated test is just an executable requirement. And you're not validating. You're not actually checking that the system solves the user's problem. So, important thing to keep in mind, don't let metrics and/or automation make you decide that it's enough to go 100% verification, because good testing is a mix of verification and validation. Now, I love this cartoon here. I hope you guys, can you read that there? The guy in the balloon says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" The guy on the ground says, "Yes, you're in a hot air balloon hovering 30 feet above the field." It's an entirely accurate statement. In fact, two entirely accurate statements. Useful? Does that help the man in the balloon? No. Now, I'm afraid that this is not unusual, that this is the test manager and that's the project manager. Okay? Can we ship? Well, we've run 1,272 tests, of which 93% have passed and 7% have failed. And we have 92 outstanding defects. No, I asked, can we ship? I didn't ask you for raw bug counts and test case counts. I didn't ask for that, but that's what I got, right? So I asked during assessments 2 questions to project managers and people outside of the testing organization. Do you understand the test results? Does your understanding of the test results help you do your job? Unfortunately, I get more often than not either no, I don't understand the test results, and so of course the second question, the answer is no, because that which you do not understand cannot help you do your job better, right? But a lot of times I also get yes, but no, right? So the example I just gave, I'm sure that the project manager would understand what the metrics about number of test cases run, passed, and failed meant, and would understand what the defect metric meant, but that doesn't answer the question that was being asked, right? So you always want to be able to answer the so what question. You don't want to be inscrutable, meaning people don't know what the heck you're saying, and you don't want to be irrelevant. Okay? And if metrics lead you into inscrutability or irrelevance, you have a problem with your metrics. Now, here's another mistake that people make. This is not the project manager floating in the balloon getting hit with a couple irrelevant statistics. This is the project manager says, can we ship? And the test manager goes, whoosh, with the water cannon. And the project manager feels like this poor fellow here is flying through the air. Right? Oh my God, what just happened to me? So, tools. Andre, you said you wanted more animation here, so I'll get some animation in for you. Tools well, I was going to say tools can make you do this, but the tools can't make you do anything. Tools can just make it easy for you to make this mistake. So, 20-page long test reports with a bunch of test case metrics and bug metrics that provide basically zero insight into the question, can we ship? Can we release this? I'll give you an example. I was going in and doing an assessment for a client and looking basically a post-mortem of a project that had failed. And one of the things that I found out was that on this project, there were 2 consultants. Full-time, all they did was produce this daily project status report that was mostly on test results because they were in acceptance testing at this point. So it's two guys, full-time, for 12 weeks. I did the math on their rate. It was basically $100,000 that was paid over the course of that project to produce that report. I went to the project manager and I asked her, would it be possible for this report to be less than 100 pages long? Are there like a few things in here that you can point to that you would call like your key dashboard elements, right? The stuff you really rely on. And I expected her to have, at least 1 or 2 favorites. She said, oh, that damn thing? I don't even look at it, I just throw it in the garbage. And she was the main target audience. It was for her that they were doing it. But, did it answer for her questions like what's been tested and what hasn't? No. It gave her a bunch of numbers on test cases that had been run and hadn't, but the question of, requirements and risks and what you actually set out to test. What are the risks? If we went into production right now, what would happen? What are we pretty confident works, and what do we have no idea? Because this is what management actually cares about. And if you can't answer these questions, then you are the person standing right over here, hitting your project manager in the face with a water cannon when you show up with a 20 or 100-page report. Okay? Nobody wants to get hit with a water cannon. You know? I am sure that this dude right here is not thinking, yay, this is the happiest day of my life. I always wanted to get hit with a water cannon. Right? There's no way that's what's going through this person's mind. So just like the project manager, when that irrelevant, huge report shows up and you know the droning starts about test case counts and bug counts, that is not making the project manager happy. A project manager is one of the key stakeholders of a testing organization. Okay, so here I've gone off on this tear about all of these stupid things, all these mistakes that people make with metrics. And so at this point you could be thinking, all right, I'm convinced. I won't do any metrics. Well, that's a mistake too. You want to make decisions based on facts. Fair enough? Facts. Facts are good, aren't they? You should make decisions based on facts. You can base your opinions on facts, but you've probably run into a fair amount of free-floating opinions that have no tether to reality, haven't you? You know, non-fact-based opinions, those are not good. First impressions, hey, it looks good to me. That's not good either. Well, how about common sense? Everybody knows. Everybody knows this is true. Everybody could be full of crap. Okay? For 2,000 years, people were full of crap about something that's actually pretty important. So Aristotle, stop me if you know this one. Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, smart Greek guy, said a lot of smart things. He said something really stupid too. He said that heavier objects fall faster than lighter objects. Sounded like common sense, so everybody believed it. And it wasn't until 2,000 years later that a smart Italian guy named Galileo climbed up into the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which wasn't leaning as much then as it is now, but it was leaning enough to be a good place to do this experiment, and he dropped 2 cannonballs of different weights and sizes off of the tower. And it wasn't thud, thud. It was thud. They both hit the ground at exactly the same time, thus disproving a common sense idea, which was nonetheless BS, that had been believed for 2,000 years by pretty much all of Western civilization. Okay, 2,000 years. You know, I mean, one thing if it had been like a few weeks people were misled. And this is 2,000 years, man, that's a long time. And you know, what's really kind of remarkable about this, think about, we're talking Greece. We're talking Greece here. Aristotle was a Greek. Y'all seen Greece, right? You know the state of Kansas in the United States? You familiar with it? It's totally flat. You could like iron a shirt on Kansas. It's so flat. It's like an ironing board. Greece does not look like Kansas, does it? Greece is not flat. It's got all sorts of cliffs. Anyone could have picked up 2 different weight rocks and walked up to the edge of a cliff and dropped them off the cliff, and notice that they both hit the ocean underneath at exactly the same time, and then go, hey, Aristotle, dude, that heavier, faster, lighter, slower thing that you believe, sorry, it's wrong. Okay? 5-second experiment. Okay? And it's not that subtle, right? So this is why you got to be careful with this sort of common sense. Human cognition, human psychology are not always your friends when it comes to making decisions based on common sense. based on what seems reasonable. There's a great book on this called The Logic of Failure by a guy named Derner, a German guy. Maybe you can get a copy of it here and read this. And if you think the Aristotle example is amazing, you know, this goes into a lot of depth on why your brain is not your friend when it comes to making decisions without all the facts. So, this is why we need metrics. Because really, ultimately, it's proof by assertion or proof by evidence. So, you got to do it. You got to do it right. So, what would it mean to do it right? Well, remember the so what question that I mentioned? Got to be able to answer the so what question. What are you trying to accomplish? You are not trying to accomplish 100% automation of your tests. Test automation is a tactic that supports a strategy that serves a larger objective. Okay? You want to start with the objective. What are you trying to accomplish? Then come up with metrics. How effective are we at accomplishing it? How efficient are we? Are we satisfying people with the way that we achieve this objective? Now, sometimes people say, satisfaction. What do I care? You know, as long as it's efficient and effective, who cares? People are satisfied. Well, let me give you a simple example. You're feeling a little bit tired at the end of the day. As I am, so I'm having some coffee here. You decide to stop at your favorite coffee shop. Is it like coffee or is it just tea? I can do the tea. The tea version of this works just as well. Coffee, okay? Okay, coffee is what you're going to get. You want coffee. So you stop at your favorite coffee place, but it closed. Now you're like, you get back in your car and you see another coffee place and you've never been there before. You know, but you're in kind of a rush now. You go in there, and it turns out they have exactly what you want. Exactly the coffee drink you want. Okay? Iced double cappuccino with whipped cream on top of it, or whatever it is, okay? They've got it. And guess what? It's on sale. Half price. And you order it, and they make it, and they get it to you in like half the time that you would have thought it would take. So it was effective. You got what you wanted, right? It was efficient in two ways. It was fast and it was cheap. And you got to love fast and cheap, right? Or do you? Are you happy? Maybe. Let's suppose that when you walked in there, the person that you gave the order to was obviously not happy to see you. If you're big, because they're looking to go home. And that is like one more person showing up, and now they got to clean up the machine again. Jerk. Why'd you come in here? Right? And then you like look behind the counter, and the guy who's making your coffee for you, he's got this long hair. It's not in a hairnet, and it's really dirty. And it looks like he hasn't washed it in 6 years or something. You know? Looks kind of like Bob Marley, who just got out of the beach or something, and there's just kind of stuff coming off of it. And then on your way out the door with your half-price, super fast, double iced cappuccino with whipped cream, an enormous cockroach runs right in front of you. You happy? You going back? Are you a satisfied customer? I'm willing to bet no. I'm willing to bet that no amount of effective and efficient is going to make up for the fact that that experience as a customer sucked, right? What's going to stick in your mind is, person treated me like crap the moment I walked in the door, the barista looked like he was a homeless person, and then there were bugs in the place. And I'm lucky I didn't get sick drinking that thing. If you even bother to drink it, throw it in the trash on the way out, right? So, you got to think about satisfaction. Are you satisfied? Now you might say, but wait a minute, that's subjective. That's not, that doesn't involve metrics. Wrong. You can use surveys for this. You can survey your stakeholders and quantitatively measure how well you're doing in terms of satisfying them. Okay? You got to know those three things. Have metrics for those three things relative to your objectives. Keep the set of metrics that you're collecting concise. Don't measure stuff just because you can. Don't measure stuff because it's easy to measure. Remember the Hawthorne effect. Measure stuff because you need to measure it. You need to know. Relevance. Again, the so what question. And the so what question also has to do with being actionable. So what? This number, this metric has this value. What are we going to do about that? Right? How are we going to take action on that? If you can't get to a place where people agree, you and everybody else, all the other people are looking at your metrics, that your set of metrics is concise, relevant, and actionable, you still have work to do on your metrics. Okay? Try to automate the process as much as you can. Use tools to automate the process. Okay? Now, this is really easy to say, but it is a common area of mistakes. We did a project for a client that involved evaluating their defect management process and recommending improvements. And one of the problems that we found in the way that they reported and managed defects was they gathered too many classifications of their defects. And a number of those classifications were overlapping. And overlapping in ways that didn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes. So, you want to look at your tools and how they're set up and ask yourself that question. Again, are we gathering too much information? Gathering overlapping information, redundant information, potentially contradictory information? And you got to train people in how to use those tools. It's not enough to just have the tools set up right. You got to train people in how to use it right. So, I had a client tell me about this incident. They hired a fellow, a guy named Ram Chilareggi, who is the originator of something called orthogonal defect classification, to come and help them set up their bug tracking system consistent with orthogonal defect classification. So he did that. And then he said to them, now we have to train your entire organization, your developers and testers, and anybody else who's going to be using the defect management system in the proper use of orthogonal defect classification. And my client said, oh gee, that sounds expensive. So we think we won't do that. And he said, that's a mistake. They said, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Because you're going to bill us for the training. And he said, well, yes, I am, but I don't think this is going to work if you don't help people understand how to use it. And they said, oh, no, we got this all under control. We're just going to make all of the classification fields mandatory. So they did that. And then 6 months later, they opened up their box of candy, their metrics that they gathered, thinking, we're going to get some amazing insights out of these classification breakdowns. And guess what was the most common classification selection for every single classification? First one on the pull-down list, that's right. You saw that bus coming, didn't you? But these guys, smart guys, you don't get to manage. This is a big, successful company. You do not get to be a senior manager at a big, successful company if you're an idiot. But you can do idiotic things, even if you're not an idiot. Okay? And that's what happened. Now, okay, got the tool set up, got people trained. Perfect. Well, not if you give people direct or indirect incentives or nudges to corrupt the data. Okay? Because this is another place where you're going to get problems. So, here's an example. Client of mine, we go in, we do an assessment, we're looking at their defects. They got 8 different groups in their technology organization. And we look at the severity distributions, among many other things, in the 8 different groups. And it turns out that in all of the groups, except for one, they had this kind of nice bell-shaped curve distribution of their defect severities. But in one group, they didn't have any severity 1 defects reported, or very few. We're like, are these programmers really that much better? Well, it turns out, I get a little nudge from the management had happened here, and the way this had worked was a VP came in charge of that one technology area, and he looked at their defects and he said, there are too many Sev1 bugs, and I'm going to fix it. And he said, the way I'm going to fix it is that from now on, any developer that has more than, I forget the exact number, more than 5, say, Sev1 bugs filed against their code in any given year gets marked down on their annual performance evaluation. And, like magic, all the severity 1 bugs went away. You know what the developers did? The developers went to the testers and they said to the testers, I swear to God, I will fix any severity 2 bug you file against my code, but please do not file any severity 1 bugs against my code because you'll be taking food out of my kids' mouths. And what are the testers going to do? I don't care about your damn kids. Let them eat sand. My priority is accurate bug reports. No, of course not. They just said, okay, fine, deal. And the manager's already patting himself on the back. Hey, look, I made all the Sev1 bugs go away. No, you didn't. You made meaningful data go away. Okay? That's what you did. You made meaningful data go away. Now your severity distributions are meaningless. Nice work. Okay? Finally, on this particular slide, important thing to remember. Tailor the metrics and their presentation. One size does not fit all. Okay? If you're like taking your standard QA or test results and putting them in a big zip file and emailing them out to the entire project team every day and saying, see attached test status, please email me if you have questions, and you're not getting any questions, that doesn't mean that they understand. Okay? That means you are the man on the other end of the water cannon. Okay? Whoosh. So don't do that. All right, so to summarize here, measurement will change behavior, guaranteed. Measurement will also redirect attention, guaranteed. So you got to be sure that what you're measuring is going to result in the behaviors you want it to result to and the attention you want it to be drawn to, okay, or something bad's going to happen. Just because your heart is in the right place and you are a good person doesn't mean you can't do something really bad with metrics. Okay, those people, these examples I've been giving you, these are not nasty, mean people. These are well-intentioned people that made these mistakes. They were trying to do the right thing. Okay? Keep these mistakes in mind. The point of me bringing these things up has not been, to point at people and indirectly who aren't here and go, ha ha, you're stupid, I'm smarter than you. Okay? The point is, here's something I saw that was stupid, try to avoid doing that. Okay? But at the same time, remember Aristotle and the falling rocks. Okay? If you just say, I give up on metrics because it's hard, you're giving up on essential insight. And that's going to create its own set of problems. They're going to be just as bad. They'll be different, but they'll be just as bad. So, diligence, good methodology are what are needed here to put good metrics in place. And I think it may be a running theme since slide number 2, Ilari. Be skeptical, including about yourself, I think was something you said, wasn't it? You should not assume that you are a holder of truth. So this is never going to be done. Okay? You should be constantly asking questions of yourself about how are these metrics working for us, how could they be better, etc. All right, do we have time for a question or two? That I will be here afterwards, and so people can come and ask me questions, yeah? Okay, so yeah, I'm in no rush to get out of here, so once we're done, I will be happy to take questions. I guess where are we going to be standing around out there? Is it? Yeah. Okay. So anybody want to ask me questions? I will be out there after I wind up putting my computer away, and happy to take them.